Welcome to the 11th episode of Anycast. This is my podcast on YouTube where I talk about any topic that's going on, mainly sports, but there's obviously some other topics to discuss as well. Where do we start? Well, let's go with the champs in hockey that are no more. The Blues finally got dethroned. Vancouver, I give them credit. They're a young, up-and-coming team. They definitely have a bright future ahead of them, and that speed of theirs definitely showed in the series as they were able to outlast the Blues in 6 games. It was a nice run for the Blues, but they just didn't look right coming back into the bubble. Since they came back from the pandemic, you can tell they were a little bit flat. I figured exhibition game, okay, that's fine. Round robin, okay, no big deal because, again, there's not really much at stake, just seeding and playoff matchups, but they never really looked like the champions. At times they showed glimpses during the series, but they never really showed it, and Vancouver was, bottom line is Vancouver was the better team the whole series, and they deserve to move on. But it was a nice run for the Blues, and it's nice to finally root for a team that is a defending champion, and it was a fun year. An odd year, to say the least, but a fun year nevertheless. And so now it's on to the next year for the Blues and try to get another cup. But Vancouver's on. They're taking on Vegas. We got the Flyers who advanced. They're going to be playing the Islanders, who were the only other team from the qualifying round that was able to advance to the second round of the playoffs. Boston and Tampa. Now that is going to be an entertaining matchup. You got the defending Eastern Conference champions who lost Tuukka Rask, remember, because he opted out to be with his family. But they stuck together. They showed the adversity that they've had, and they're able to come together as a team and take out the Hurricanes again. And so I think they got a pretty good chance to make a deep push. I still think the Flyers have a chance to get to the Cup Finals. They now have a really good chance to win it now that the champs are out of it. You got some really good teams, though, in the Western Conference. Vegas, particularly, they have looked like the strongest team in the playoffs thus far, and we'll see if that continues against Vancouver. In the other semifinals, which actually got started last night, Dallas and Colorado. The Avalanche, you wondered how they were going to fare against a much stiffer competition because the Coyotes really didn't pose much of a threat, especially in the last 2 games when Colorado won those 2 each by a 7-1 score. And I mean, you give the Coyotes credit for getting to the round, but clearly they were overwhelmed by Colorado. And Dallas, you figure, well, they lacked the offense, especially in the round robin, and they still didn't really show that against Calgary. I mean, they picked up a little bit. They really lit it up last night against Colorado, and they look like a much different team. And if they can play like they did last night, I think that's going to be a long series, too. Colorado could be in for a long battle. So you got some intriguing matchups in the Stanley Cup playoffs. The NBA playoffs have also gotten going. The Raptors look very much like the defending champions that they are. Granted, they're playing a net squad that doesn't have KD or Kyrie Irving, so that's an easy move on for the Raptors. Bucks and Lakers both suffered stunning Game 1 losses, but have each rebounded to win 2 in a row, and so it looks like they've taken control now. And yeah, it looks like, I mean, that's pretty much what I've seen so far. I haven't really paid much attention to the NBA playoffs since they've returned, other than those series. I know Boston's now up 3-0 on the Sixers, and it looks like it's going to be another disastrous year for the Sixers. That trust, I don't know if you can really trust them anymore. They just don't look good. Or maybe Boston just flat out has their number. Either or. The other big NBA news that came out of this is the Minnesota Timberwolves won the number 1 pick in the draft. They won the lottery. And so congratulations to them. That's not the only thing the Minnesotans are cheering about right now. Lynx are doing pretty good. They have one of the best records in the WNBA, although they've been consistently one of the best teams in the last decade in the WNBA. And then, of course, there's my Twids, who still are leading the division at the moment. But it is not going to be an easy one this year. Indians look like they're going to be a threat. They've got the pitching. In my opinion, they're a little bit better pitching-wise than the Twins. And then the White Sox have come on as of late. 7 straight wins, and they're only a game out of first place. They do it with the offense. The reason why I think the Twins are still going to win this division is even though they got not better pitching than the Indians, they still have the pitching. and they've got the offense. They have the balance. Whereas the White Sox and the Indians, they're half teams. Indians are dominantly pitching. White Sox are dominantly offense. The Twins have a perfect balance of offense and pitching that complement each other. Now, if we could just stop playing the Royals, because half of the Twins' losses have come at the hands of the Royals. And I got a buddy who's going to be quite thrilled about that because they're going nowhere. And this is the one thing he can enjoy is every chance of beating the Twins. And so I know if you're watching, you know who I'm talking about. But the Royals, I mean, they look like they could be an up-and-coming team in maybe a few years or so, but not this year. And the Rays look like they're going to be a threat to the Yankees in the AL East. So this will not be a runaway for the Yankees. And I think this is going to make the playoffs interesting, especially with the expanded field. You got a lot of other teams that are going to be in the mix. Although, quite frankly, some of them don't deserve to make the playoffs. And they're only going to get in because of the benefit of this expanded playoff roster. I don't know if this is going to be a foregoing thing or if it's just for this year. But, come on. Isn't the whole purpose is to have the best teams and get the best matchups? I still think in the end, though, the Twins and the Yankees are going to be up there. Houston has caught fire all of a sudden, but unless they can get the pitching going, I really don't think they're going to be the threat that they had been the last few years. Oakland looks like they're going to be a bigger threat out of the AL West than Houston will be. Tampa, I think, could be your dark horse, mainly because they're always a sneaky team that flies under the radar, and everyone wants to count them out, and they always find a way to do well and challenge the Yankees, and they've absolutely dominated them in the season series so far. So that'll be something to watch out for. On the NL side, it still looks like it's going to be Dodgers and the Cubs, and the Dodgers are now taking full control of the West because the Rockies, who at one point looked like may have been a challenger, have faded in a heartbeat. And I think a team that could be a reckoning if they make the playoffs, and I'm going to be using this because apparently this is the thing now for them, the Slam Diego Padres. If you're missing the reference, they hit a grand slam in 4 consecutive games. No other team in baseball had ever done that. That is an unbelievable feat. Do you realize what the odds are of hitting a grand slam 4 consecutive games for a team? Well, I can't tell you what the odds are exactly, but I can tell you they're pretty darn high. So, I think those are going to be your teams to watch out for. The Cardinals, I mean, they've been hanging in there, but the problem is they have a heavy loaded schedule because they got to make up for all the lack of games that they had due to the outbreak. And I hate to do this to the Milwaukeeans. I mean, you got the Bucks. You got to be happy about the Bucks. They've got one good team going, but man, are the Brewers ridiculous. I mean, it's one thing to lose 2 out of 3 to my Twins because we're clearly better than the Brewers. They come right back, they go to Pittsburgh, and they have not only lost to them twice, they have been thumped both times by the Pirates. And they're the worst team in baseball. Pittsburgh, that is. I mean, come on. How do you lose 2 in a row to the worst team in baseball in that fashion? They're probably going to make the playoffs because of the ridiculous format, but that's not saving Council's job. I think he gets the axe at the end of the season. The Brewers, I've watched them play, mainly because they play the Twins, and so I'm watching the Twins. They do not look like they want to be out there playing. They're committing errors. They're making mental mistakes. Their pitching's not that great. Their offense has been horrendous all season, and it's a miracle that they're even at 500 in the first place. They just don't look like they're out there ready to play, and I think Council's going to get the boot. Unless they somehow win the World Series, I think that's going to be it for Council. Now, other shocking baseball news, and I think this, again, reiterates the state that we're in right now. Tom Brenneman, who I absolutely like. He's one of my favorite NFL commentators for Fox. He also does games for the Cincinnati Reds. He got suspended because he used a bad slur. And again, it reminds us that we need to get rid of that language. I mean, that's just horrible. And I don't know if he knew that the mic was on when he said it. This was after they came back from commercial on the Fox Sports Ohio telecast, if you're watching that game. And so they pulled him after the 5th inning of the second game of the doubleheader because, again, the Reds were playing a makeup series with the Royals, or makeup games because of the pandemic for them. And Tom Brenneman, I'm not even going to go into detail. You can probably go on Google and figure it out. But he said something that was offensive. And so Fox Sports Ohio and the Reds decided to suspend him. And he's not going to be calling NFL games on Fox anymore. Not anymore, I shouldn't say that. But for the foreseeable future, he's not going to be calling games for him. And I think it's terrible because I respect the guy so much. He's a great commentator, but I think this is a reminder of the state that we're in right now. We need to get rid of these racial remarks. And I think we need to learn and understand each other and learn about equality and learn about being together, which is why I think as we transition to the Democratic National Convention that took place, why we need Biden and Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris is going to break the barriers. She is the first African-American woman to be a running mate for presidency. She's also the first Indian-American woman that is going to be running for president. And so I think that's a big deal to have not only an African-American, but an Indian Indian-American native running for president or running for vice president, I should say, because she represents what we need: equality, women's rights, African-Americans' rights, other rights of other countries like India, like Asia, like Mexico, like Europe. All these different nations, because in the end, aren't we all the same? We're all human beings. We may have different origins and we may come from different places, but the bottom line is we are all the same and we need to treat each other equally. And so this is why we need to have Joe Biden for president. And if you did not watch his speech at the end of the Democratic National Convention, that's a must watch. Absolutely a must watch. Because his story is phenomenal. And in case you haven't heard about it, I'll give a little tease or spoiler. He had an issue as a kid with stuttering. And I mean, that's perfectly normal. There's nothing wrong with that in my opinion. I mean, it's okay to have these differences. That's what makes us unique. But he was able to overcome that, his speech problems, and be able to present that speech and deliver it with absolute accuracy, without a hint of doubt, and sends a strong, powerful message that Trump will not be going on for 4 more years. He's done. Trump is done. And now he's going to have to scramble this week to do something at the Republican National Convention, although in my opinion, it doesn't matter, because you know who I'm voting for. I did not vote for Trump 4 years ago. You can see why. Now that everything is unfolded, you can see why I didn't vote for him and why I'm not voting for him again this time around. We need someone that's going to bring us all back together and is also going to help us deal with the pandemic. Because Trump continues to push it aside, hoping for a miracle to happen. Well, guess what? The miracle has not happened. We are coming up at the end of summer and we're still dealing with a bunch of cases and a bunch of deaths that we should not be dealing with. Because Trump continues to push it aside and be stubborn. Because he wants his perfect world and he doesn't want anything to do with the pandemic. That's not what a leader is all about. A leader is about taking action, taking charge, and doing what's right for the good of the people. And that's what Joe Biden is. Now, he was not the highlight of the Democratic National Convention. You probably heard about the 13-year-old kid. Braden, I believe is his name, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, but at any rate, he also has a stuttering problem. And for him to give that speech, and you can tell he was trying to deal with the stuttering struggle. But despite that, he overcame that and he's delivered a wonderful message. And without a doubt, that is the moment. That's my hero. CNN has this heroes segment. Well, that's my hero. He's a hero for everybody because he overcame his fear and his struggle and delivered that message. And anybody that does that gets a pat on the back, in my opinion. And in my opinion, he deserves a lot of praise. So I congratulate you, young man, and I'm applauding you right now for what you did. Because that takes a lot to overcome that and deliver a speech like that. So bravo to you. I appreciate what you do, and I appreciate you being an example for everyone to follow. Now, let's go back to sports a little bit. I wanted to get that out there because we were transitioning over to it, but let's bring it back to the sports. Going back to NASCAR, we had the Daytona Roval course last week, and by golly, was it fun. I mean, the drivers, and give them credit, because most of these Cup Series drivers had never set foot on the Daytona Roval. You know, the road course that they run for the 24 hours of Daytona. And I tell you what, they did a heck of a job. There weren't that many cautions. I think there was only like 2, maybe 3 cautions at most that involved an accident outside of the end of the stages. I give them credit because I thought turn 1, lap 1, this was going to be a disaster. And it ended up being an exciting finish, especially since my man Chase Elliott won the race. And Jimmy Johnson had a nice finish. And then he followed that up yesterday by, both followed that up by having strong runs at Dover. And now Johnson's in position to make the playoffs. Speaking of the Hendrick drivers, I want to talk about those Darlington paint schemes because by golly, I'm sure everyone has heard about it. But let's start with the 7-time champion. Because as you know, we've got the Darlington race coming up in about a couple of weeks. I believe it's Labor Day weekend. So Darlington has this throwback weekend type deal where all these drivers can have throwback schemes. Brad Keselowski, I'm going to mention him real quick because I have seen his paint scheme. He's going to pay tribute to his 2010, at the time, Nationwide. That was what the Xfinity Series was called at that point. And there's a little lesson for you kids. And so he's doing the discount tire scheme. I mean, it's a good scheme, but it's not really a retro scheme. I like the fact that Austin Dillon, who, by the way, did come back this week after missing the Roval race because he, too, tested positive for the coronavirus. But he came back, tested negative 2 days in a row. You know the drill because it happened to Jimmy Johnson. Came back, had a nice running at Dover yesterday. But he's going to pay tribute to Junior Johnson. But the focus is going to be about my guys at Hendrick and their cars, particularly Jimmy Johnson. He's paying tribute to the other 2 7-time champions, Richard Petty, the King, Dale Earnhardt Sr., the Intimidator. Now, if you haven't seen their paint schemes, then here's a little nugget for you. Richard Petty has like a blue STP paint scheme. Dale Earnhardt has the black iconic Good Wrench car. Johnson is paying tribute to both of them by combining the 2 paint schemes, which has never been done in the history of mankind. Or at least from what I know. I'm just probably exaggerating that. But anyway, the top of the car is going to be the Richard Petty colors and number font. The rest of the car, which is going to be wrapped around, so like the front, the sides, and the back, it's all Dale Earnhardt and the black color scheme, which I think is really, really, really cool. The only thing that is Jimmy Johnson's is going to be his number and his sponsor, Ally. Everything else is those 2 paint schemes. That is by far the greatest throwback scheme in the history of throwback schemes, and you could argue this could be the greatest paint scheme in the history of NASCAR. Because no one has ever done this before. Now, if you're a Digimon fanatic, this is what we call DNA digivolving. I'm sorry, I have to mention that. I'm a geek for Digimon. I apologize for that. But think of it this way. Richard Petty, DNA digivolves with Dale Earnhardt, and you get the Jimmy Johnson paint scheme. If you want to put it into that perspective. Now, the other drivers on Hendrick are going to pay tribute to Jimmy Johnson. Chase Elliott is going to have a throwback Lowe's color scheme. Obviously, his Napa sponsors will be there, so it won't be a Lowe's car, but you get the idea. That'll be from 2009. Alex Bowman's doing the same thing for his number 88 car, except they'll be from the 2006 year. And William Byron's taking advantage of the Liberty University colors, and he's going to pay tribute to Johnson's 2013 All-Star race win at Charlotte. Because we all know Johnson dominated Charlotte at one point. And so, in my opinion, Johnson's paint scheme is like on another planet. You're not even going to compare any of the other paint schemes to that one because that one wins by a landslide. In fact, it's so landsliding, it's on 2 different planets. And I try not to be biased because, you know, I'm a Hendrick guy, but come on! You got to think those other 3 paint schemes are going to be up there in my opinion. I mean, Austin Dillon's will be up there, but I gotta put my Hendrick guys up at the top. And I'm trying not to be biased or anything, but that's what I think. So you will probably see the paint schemes though, because as you're watching this video, I normally have like an image on there. Obviously, you will not be seeing blues for the foreseeable future, but you will see those die casts. In fact, that might be my image for the YouTube video watchers for the upcoming Anycasts until I decide to do something else. So that way you can enjoy the nostalgic feel. So let me know what you think on those paint schemes, and tell me what you think about your teams and how they're doing, and let me know what you're thinking. But I appreciate you guys tuning in, and I look forward to another Anycast with you guys. So take care, guys.